Hey, welcome to the Film Podcast. I am Ricardo, as always. I'm still myself. It's been at least 3 years since we've recorded a podcast, but we're back. Not better. I'd say we're worse off. And none of the original, how should I call it? The original Avengers could join us today, but we have Marvin as our guest. Marvin, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm some random jerk.
Now. Everybody's a friend of the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us and giving these listeners some recommendations for Netflix streamings.
Well, now that we're all trapped in this existential nightmare, okay, so it's interesting because Netflix has like they're sort of like, you know, they had the prestige stuff, right? And they're willing to be like, oh, look at our super awesome, but they're also willing to just have trash, right?
Oh, totally.
And I think they're self-aware of that. And like, so like the last thing I just finished completely watching was this. Have you seen any of Castlevania at all?
You know what? I watched the first episode and it was really cool, but I'm like, this is a thing. I have to finish so many other things. I can't start this right now.
It's fine. That's fine. Because okay, so Castlevania is like, okay, I remember the games. I remember this is like Dracula, Belmont's gonna kill Dracula. Cool. So then you start watching that first season and you're like, oh, this is awesome because Dracula is like a really sympathetic, awesome character. And you're kind of like, yeah, Dracula, kill them all. I want them all to die because what they do to his wife is like the worst shit in the world. And you're like, yeah, I don't want the Belmonts to enter the picture. So it kind of like is good for the first episode because you're like, yeah, he's just doing what I want him to do. And then Trevor Belmont shows up and he just mopes around being drunk for a while. And then the other characters show up and they go, and you're drunk. Okay. What are we gonna do? There's monsters everywhere now. And he goes, I don't know. And then they discover Alucard just sleeping underground. And then they go, well, we should stop Dracula, right? and they go, yeah, we should. And then the first season's over.
Oh my God. And there's 3, right? There's 3 seasons?
Yeah, there's 3 seasons. The first season is literally them just like being like, okay, we're just gonna hang out.
I do like you said, I do like that like they don't poo-poo the trash movies. They really kind of let you at them.
Yeah, I mean they know people want. I mean, that's why Tiger King is out. Like, people want to see trash. Like, and like, you know, they also want this like nice softball stuff. You know, Castlevania is not softball. Like, it's some of the most like gratuitous, like you know, I watch violent shit, you know, but the level of violence they have in this show where they're like just tearing people apart and like there's titties being torn off and people's brains exploding and you're like, Jesus Christ, even if you like presented this in like a Japanese anime context, this is a lot. Like this is an American studio, but I think like the first like season was actually just by one guy kind of animating it all. Like, let me just make sure. But like from what I understood, like he didn't animate it all himself, but it's like it was like a 2-person studio or something. And then they were just like, okay, we got a pitch going, and they showed a pitch, and then they were like, yeah, go for it. And they're like, oh, suddenly we have to hire people. And it's just it was just a producer named Kevin Cold. And it was I think Warren Ellis actually wrote it.
No way.
At least the initial season. Yeah.
From like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds?
Yeah. It's Warren Ellis. Yeah.
Oh, you should have started with that, Marvin. God damn it, dude! This is a fact you got to start off with.
Yeah. So yeah, like Warren Ellis of like, you know, of X-Men and like, you know, the guy wrote Extremis and shit. So
okay. I think we're thinking of the wrong guy.
It's not the musician. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, because Warren Ellis has written things with like Nick Cave.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was like, wait a minute, you have my attention now.
Yes, I mentally mixed them up as well.
I know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah. So like, it's like, and the writing feels that way, where it's like it's kind of paced. Like, I think the way they make seasons is they actually write a very long movie, and then they go, and here's when your episode will stop.
Okay.
So like when you watch it as a show, you're like, why is this the end of an episode? And I think it's just because they're like, well, they asked us for 6 episodes this season.
That's how we cut them.
Yeah, we're just gonna cut them at the 20-minute parts.
Yeah, I heard the guy who created Eastbound and Down. It's not the actor, it's the other guy. He didn't know how to write a TV show, so he literally wrote like a movie that they just cut up into like 20-minute episodes. Because that's what I mean.
I'm down for that if you know you're going to be on streaming, because it's all going to show back to back anyway.
Yeah,
so it's like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, I don't know if do you see I Am Not Okay With This?
Yes. Yeah,
so that kind of runs that way too, where like, it's a thing I'm glad Netflix is starting to do, where like, remember the Marvel Netflix shows? Like,
yeah.
They were generally good, but they were always too long, because they were always like Luke Cage is the prototypical example. It's like that show, that first season basically ends at the 7th episode, and then you're like, great series, this is a great story, let's stop. But then they realize they are contractually obligated to make 6 more, so they just throw in that Diamondback episode, Diamondback story, and you're like, this is really weird. Why is he quoting the Warriors unironically? Like, it doesn't really jive with the rest of what the show was doing. Like, he literally, it's like they wrote the first half very carefully, and then they like, very carefully crafted like this really good story that's tight, and like the action beats make sense. In the second half, they're like, shit, we have a month left. Let's just write something. Let's just have a scene where Diamondback is framing Luke Cage by walking down the street yelling, "I'm Luke Cage. I'm Luke Cage."
I like the European like seasons, which is like 4 episodes, and they're like, the episodes are a little longer.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's why that's something that's great about I Am Not Okay With This, is that one, they realize it's streaming, obviously, so they let the episodes kind of meld into each other. And then the other is that these episodes are like 20 minutes long, so they're really well paced.
Yeah,
like there's no fat to the show. And granted, the show, just to quickly summarize it for people listening, it's basically like Firestarter with the cast of It. And it's like
totally.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like that type of likable characters and teens, and and they're living their regular life, but suddenly this girl has telekinetic explosive powers, and you're like, cool, just run with it. And it doesn't even get to a dramatic conclusion until the very last episode, but the whole time it's like fun to watch, because you're like, oh, I like these characters. The acting is actually really great, because they didn't have to shoot so much, that they can like really concentrate on making these scenes good. And it's edited super tight, and it's like, because they don't have to like really pad anything. That's one thing you would notice in the Marvel Netflix shows, is that especially action scenes, they would kind of edit them like padded out, so that like actions, they don't really cut on the action, they cut right before the action. So it almost pads out a little, but I'm Not Okay With This. It's like, it's super tightly done. It's great. And
I really love that show. It was hard to like, I think I watched it in one sitting, because I was like, I want to watch one episode and then I'm going to go to sleep. But then I was like, oh gosh, all right, I'll finish it off. But it was really well made, and the ending is like, there's a really good cliffhanger, and it's like not in a cheesy way. It's really well done.
Yeah, it's like, the premise of like girl with superpowers is pretty overdone. I think it helps that it comes from the material is I forget the name, but he's the brother of Charles Foreman. Charles Foreman, Forsman, I should say.
He's a British guy. He's the guy who did the other Netflix show, End of the Fucking World.
Yeah. So see, I didn't like End of the. So it's a personal thing for me. Like when a character just kills an animal, I'm just like, I'm done. So it's like I'm not gonna really continue. It's partly why I couldn't continue Tiger King. I'm just like, these are all assholes. I don't care. So I can't just leave it alone. But then but you could tell End of the Fucking World, like the content, it's in that same headspace, where it's just like, these kids are just trying to deal with. It's a growing up show, a Bildungsroman, as they would say. And it's just interesting ways to look at it. It's really. Have you seen any of the Charles Forsman comics?
No.
Yeah, they're drawn like they're very simple, like indie comic, like stick figure-y. Like not stick figure-y.
You know what? I did when I finished watching the first season of End of the Fucking World.
Yeah, it's exact same style. Yeah.
I went and I looked at it, and it's very like simple, very very simple. Like it's like it. I imagine like somebody's like, I know how to write, but I can't like illustrate. So they're getting stick figures.
Yeah, but the content doesn't like that's very indie comics, right? Like a lot of indie comics are like, you have the Crumb where it's like, this is fucking gorgeous, but he has like one tone, and then you have the American Splendor where it's like it's simpler, the composition's a lot simpler, but it's awesome because of the content. And End of the Fucking World and I'm Not Okay with This is like kind of in that realm. So you take that as a basis for a show, even though, like they kind of just borrow elements from it. It's not like really a direct adaptation for many reasons. And, you end up with something that's like very different from most things on Netflix. Like, because Netflix really has this thing where they want to just have a lot of content. And I think they're starting to realize, it doesn't really matter. There's a ton of content. There's already so much content that sometimes the type of person looking for a good show just wants it to be nice and tight and really good. And I think they're doing that with this. This is like their first shot at it, and it's done pretty well, I'm guessing. So I would love for them to continue because it ends on like a cliffhanger. So I would love for them to continue and see what's going to happen with that.
And it's kind of something that I've always wanted, which is like kind of like an indie superhero kind of show. Like, where I wish like that's where like Marvel did with some of like their B and C characters, where it's like, well, not only Marvel, but like I wish like DC did that. Like, and they did do it with like Joker, but like where they're like, hey, we're gonna take a chance, we're gonna give this person like only like $50 million, which is nothing in the studio system, but like let them do whatever they want with like this property, and that's kind of how these things are run.
Well, I mean, I also like the setting. Like it's a nice setting because it's like, let's get away from the big cities. Like even when Marvel works with like small characters, like BC characters, like they're always like, it's like a joke amongst the Marvel Netflix shows where they're like, this city, like they're always in New York. And it's like, we get it. We're fucking sick of New York. Like it's cool that this is in like rural shitty Pennsylvania. And we're dealing with a different we're dealing with like, poverty. We're dealing with like, the coal towns that are being like, they were decimated after the recession, and like, it's an interesting perspective to throw in a superhero,
Totally.
And you don't even get the vibe of superhero. You get the vibe of this is a metaphor for like growing up as a teenager, and then it morphs into something more tangible by like the 6th or 7th episode, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, it's like not just a metaphor. It's becoming like like an intricate part of the actual like direct plot. Yeah. And that makes it interesting. Yeah.
I really like all the actors in this thing. We should give like a synopsis. So we give a synopsis for this, but the synopsis for the other show we're talking about, which is End of the Fucking World, is about the 17-year-old kid who thinks he's a psychopath, and this girl who he thinks he's a serial killer, basically. And the girl who he thinks he's going to kill first, kind of falls in love with him, and they have this like Bonnie and Clyde, like true romance, kind of like high school romance, and they go on the run. I think it's pretty fun. I think I get why you hate it, which is because
it's a personal thing. Because as soon as I see that, I'm like, we're done. Because I can't really. I can tell the show wants you to re-sympathize with him by the end. But.
We both picked five selections for recommendations. They're all streaming on Netflix currently. They've been pretty good about putting a lot of good stuff on there lately, especially because everybody's trapped indoors.
Yeah, they're shoving stuff out right now.
My first pick is from a movie from 2012. Look, nobody liked this movie when it first came out. I liked it. I think it's fun. I think it's a cool movie to watch with kids. And I really enjoyed it. It's John Carter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Make your case.
Okay. So, okay. First of all, I love the original book. The original book is A Princess of Mars, written by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I can't defend it. It's kind of cheesy. It's really cheesy, but it's a good kids movie. It's just a fun, like, this guy, this human ends up in Mars and he's got to help this princess from Mars. That's basically it. That's all you got to know. It stars Taylor Kitsch as a human that gets sucked up into space. Willem Dafoe is one of the voices. Samantha Morton, Thomas Hayden Church, Mark Strong plays a villain. It's a shameful pleasure for me to watch this movie.
It's an Andrew Stanton movie.
Yeah. We should talk about that. So Andrew Stanton, if you don't know the name, he was like the writer and director of a ton of the Pixar movies.
Yeah, the last one he did before he left was WALL-E.
Yeah. So he did, as a director, he started out, he did A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, WALL-E, and then this was his first like live action movie, and it didn't go well. And I mean, Disney gave him a shot. Because he had done so well with like all the animated movies, and it didn't go so well for Andrew Stanton.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, I think he was kind of following in the steps of like Brad Bird, right? Because Brad Bird did a lot of awesome Pixar stuff.
Yeah.
Before that, even did Iron Giant, one of the best animated movies ever made. And then, his jump to Mission Impossible 4 it's like a lot of people still argue is the best Mission Impossible movie. So it's like, he had a fantastic jump. I think the difference is that Andrew Stanton's choice of initial concept is difficult to do even in the best of circumstances.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a hard story to adapt.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you're adapting like a classic like this, you're already the cards are stacked up against you from the beginning.
Yeah.
But he really did a good. I think where Brad Bird like excelled was that he had a lot of action in his
pedigree.
His pedigree.
He has a good sense for it, which is why they look
even,
so good. Yeah,
even like in like The Incredibles, which Brad Bird did, it's really like the action's really well done. Like he had an eye for it. And Andrew Stanton, like a lot of people don't know this, and Marvin, you know this about me. I hate WALL-E. I hate WALL-E.
I was trying to see if I should just blurt it out.
Mention
like,
it.
WALL-E, your favorite.
I hate WALL-E. And yeah, it's a slow movie. It's a slow burn, even for an animated movie. And he didn't have it in him, I think. And so Brad Bird did his first live action movie, which was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. That was 2011. And I think that Andrew Stanton was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And it just didn't work out for him. I feel bad because he is a pretty good director when it comes to animated stuff. And you know what? He went back and he directed TV stuff, and I've seen him like his 2 episodes of Stranger Things were really well done, I thought.
Yeah. He's in there.
Yeah,
I mean, like he's making it work.
Yeah, and he did Legion, and so I think he's kind of going back and kind of reverse engineering like his directing career, and I hope he gets a chance to direct another thing, because this wasn't badly directed. It just wasn't the right project. Especially because he wrote and directed it.
Yeah, it's like if Brad Bird got to do that earthquake movie before he did Mission Impossible, that would have fucked his career, But it just happened to be Mission Impossible.
Are you talking about?
It's like a 1918 like earthquake movie or something. He was like always like specking.
Really?
But like no one wanted to do it. For obvious reasons. It's like hard to do an old-timey earthquake movie.
Yeah, that's true.
So
even like his follow-up was Tomorrowland, which was not a very good movie.
No.
Yeah.
That had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Just Just it's just like the biggest thing is just tonally. It's like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a savior movie, or do you want to be like a wonder movie, or like everything's fucked movie? Like you don't quite
yeah,
know
I know. And I wanted to love that movie so much because I'm like, I loved Ghost Protocol. I like Brad Bird. Let's see what he does. And no, Clooney let me down, man. I'm gonna blame Clooney.
That's another thing. Yeah, Clooney's almost always attached to a project where you're like, that's gonna be okay.
Yeah. You know, and he let us down. Yeah. What's your first pick?
Well, I had mentioned I am not okay with this, but maybe we can move on to something.
No, mention something else. If you have a longer list,
more mainstream. Okay, so everyone probably is watching it, going to watch it, but I'll mention it anyway because I want to talk about it. Which is Ozark.
The third season, which is the new season, just came out.
It just came out
a couple days ago.
Yeah, a couple days ago. So I watched all of it this Saturday. And I don't want to spoil anything about it, other than.
So I haven't seen it. So kind of give me the pitch of what it is.
Of Ozark in general.
Yeah, I never seen any of them.
Oh, okay. So Breaking Bad, except it's an accountant.
Okay.
Yeah. So because it's very like, I think the people who run the show will like they'll probably say up and down, oh, it's not Breaking Bad, you know, and it does change from that initial flavor and premise as the show goes on, but it's very clearly from the same. It's the child of Breaking Bad, like you can tell.
Yeah,
and like, you know, it even stars what's his face, like Jason Bateman from a comedy show, Arrested Development, to Ozark. You know, Bryan Cranston from Malcolm in the Middle to friggin' Breaking Bad. You know, is a similar transplant, and they both make a great dramatic turn. But the main thing about it is that I think Ozark kind of learns from Breaking Bad's a great show. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, so there are some people who, you know, are like, it's overrated, and that's fine. But it's hard to dispute what quality, like writing and stuff it was. But one of the main downsides of Breaking Bad, I would say, despite it being probably one of my favorite shows of all time, is just that when it came to like, especially writing female characters, Breaking Bad wrote it pretty like one note at the best. Like a good example is Skylar. Skylar is pretty much written just to be an obstacle for Walt in Breaking Bad. Like, she has no character. She basically exists just to tell Walter, why are you being a bad husband? You know?
Yeah.
And then as the show goes on, she starts making like complete contradictions. Like, there'll be one episode that's saying, why are you killing someone? In the next episode, she'll go, well, why don't you just kill him? You know, like, it's just to say the opposite to Walt. And you would think by the last season of Breaking Bad, like, they introduce a new female character, Lydia Rodart Quayle, and you go, okay, new female character, maybe they'll write her to be better. And then you realize, no, she's just this nervous wreck who has no other character other than she's a nervous wreck. And you're supposed to believe that she's in charge of this side of this criminal empire. And you're like, that's stupid. But Ozark, like, it kind of realizes that formula, when you make it too centered on the male protagonist in a family, especially a family setting where he has a wife, you kind of start like objectifying that female character, and they kind of just become like a narrative tool. And instead, a lot of the female characters in the show end up being like some of the most interesting characters compared to the main character, whose name's Marty.
Okay.
And that's what makes it fascinating to me. It's that, like, yes, we're going through a lot of the same motions as Breaking Bad, and that, like, you know, we got to launder money in the Ozarks because of shit that went down. But it's really awesome in the sense that, like, you see every side character grow with the show instead of just turning into like a tool just to keep a narrative interesting. It's very much like a show where the characters kind of bounce off each other, and that creates the plot, which is really satisfying. But you can still see where the plot is plotted out. Like, it's not just like, let's have stuff just bounce around and see where things land. It's like, it's still very charted, but it's narratively satisfying that way. It's the type of show where, like, as I watch it, it's like one of those few shows where you go, shit, I wish I could write like that, or I wish I wrote something like that, where you're like, that's really good. Like, and it doesn't start off super strong, but it turns into its own like amazing thing, especially like by this season, there's so many different players in play now, and they're all significant versus like in Breaking Bad, by the end, the significance becomes basically 3 characters, and that's kind of a shame.
Yeah. I was kind of like, I kind of fear that for like, because I watched Narcos Mexico.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like scared that was like they were gonna, because for the most part, like the people who started the cartel were good, were dudes, but as of like when you get to like the late 80s, early 90s, the people who took over were the people who didn't go to jail, who didn't get killed, which were the wives, the sisters of all the narcos. And I was glad to see that at the end it kind of started the tide turned, and they gave the female characters like a lot of screen time, which I hope season 3 is a lot more of them, because they're really good characters, really good actors, and it's really well written by the end of season 2.
Yeah, I think when I initially watched Narcos Mexico, like at first the pacing was so fast that it threw me off. Like he goes from basically country cop to head of empire in 3 episodes. So you're like, holy shit, what kind of magician is this guy? So narratively, you kind of are like a little confused, but then as you keep watching, you go, well, it's because he's really crafty.
Yeah.
And then by the end, like, like some of the character turns are crazy, but that I'm not gonna spoil the twist, but that twist at the ending of the first season.
Yeah.
And then the way it ties into the characters that show up in the second season, it's such a good gimmick. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Like that type of gimmick where like it narratively kind of fucks with what was going on the whole time. Like,
I follow a lot of like the things that are happening politically, and like, well, I have always followed it. I mean, I'm Mexican American. I've always followed it. Like I've always been in the know, and I always thought when they first started the show, I was like, well, even before the show, but when it was just Narcos, I'm like, eventually they have to link it up to Mexico, because it catches up, and they did, and I was like, okay, now they linked it up. Now they either have to do 10 seasons, or they're gonna have to like really speed it up, because so many things happened in like the span of like 10 years.
That's true.
So many things happened, and I'm glad that they're getting to like the people who like went to jail, the people who got killed, and the people who like eventually took over once like that political party fell down, and what came of it. And it's really interesting, and I also like the political stuff that they're doing on that show as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I understand why it was so fast at the beginning, because like a lot of what he was doing is just going around to people, convincing them, right? He had to do it for like basically 7 or 8 cartels at once.
Oh yeah.
So if you paced it the way you would pace most other shows, like every episode would be him sitting down with the cartel, like going, so what do you want?
Yeah. Let me tell you why you shouldn't kill me and why you should join us.
Yeah, I did the same clever thing I just did at the end of the first episode 7 more times. So
so there you got 2 for 1 recommendations. You got Narcos and you got Ozarks. Ozarks, it's on its 3rd season, right?
Yeah,
that's what just came out.
Yeah, it just finished 3rd season, and it's starting to become very much like I characterize it as Breaking Bad with an accountant at the beginning.
Okay. You know what? I've only seen Breaking Bad. I've only seen the first season of Breaking Bad.
Oh, I see. That's fine, because that's
no. I mean, it makes sense to me what you're saying, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just telling you, I literally there's so many damn shows I gotta catch up.
I got you.
So Ozark season 3, Narcos Mexico season 2. Those are our picks. My next pick is from 2016. It's a really fun movie. I think it moves pretty fast. It's really fast and witty, and there's a lot of action in it. And it is 2016's Free Fire, directed by Ben Wheatley.
Yeah.
I really love this movie. It's just so witty. It stars I always butcher this guy's name. Is it Charlton Copley?
Oh, Charlton Copley. Yeah.
I was very close.
Yeah.
People who have listened to the show know I'm notoriously known for butchering names. Brie Larson, Armie Hammer, Cillian Murphy, Sam Riley, and Noah Taylor. People who you would recognize. Have you seen this, Marvin?
Oh, yeah. It's just like if you want like, because you can tell the chamber piece style of it is to like it's very clearly for budgetary reasons. You can tell, but like they use the hell out of it, and it's like it's like use every part of the buffalo sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just satisfying as well because like who did choreography because it's actually like pretty kind of satisfying to watch sort of thing.
And also too, like a lot of these like shoot 'em ups that aren't done well, you watch them and the geography is all messed up. Like you're like, where are we? Are we in the same room? Where are we? And this makes perfect sense. Like every time, like it cuts from character to character, and you always know where people are at. And it's chaotic. For the people who want to know the synopsis, it's set in Boston in 1978, and it's the meeting of these like two gangsters that are going to exchange money for guns. They're buying guns, and there's the people buying the guns and then the gangsters selling the guns, and they meet in a deserted warehouse, and one of them may or may not be an undercover cop, and a shootout ensues and they get trapped in the warehouse and no one could leave because they're all pinned down, and it's just a lot of funny characters saying funny things and shooting each other. It's just fun.
Yeah, I mean like the premise almost gives way in the first like 15 minutes or so, and it just turns into
yeah. And I really like this version of Armie Hammer. Like if he had been sometimes he's not charismatic at all, and sometimes they let him be himself, and I think he's a better as a comedic actor than he is as like the leading like dramatic guy.
Oh yeah, like what was that fucking cowboy movie? What was that?
The Lone Ranger?
Yeah. oh my goodness.
Yes, that was not good. That was not a good turn for him.
Charming protagonist. It's just like
you
just fucking like Johnny Depp caricature stuck on his side, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
I like when he kind of plays like the dirtbag. He does it well. He does it well because he's kind of like really good looking, but really charming, and he get away with a lot of things. I really actually liked him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, that was actually I was surprised by how like interesting that movie would be, like because it's like you would think, why are we remaking this movie? Of all movies.
But Guy Ritchie did a really good job of like keeping it light, and like everyone's funny in it, and I wish we would have seen that. What's the guy who played Superman?
Shit,
not Arnie.
You know, Superman.
The guy from the Man of Steel guy.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Henry Cavill.
So yeah. Henry Cavill.
If he had been that charming in Superman, it would have been amazing. It would have been great, but he didn't. He chose to play it like Batman.
Yeah. No one would let him.
That's true. He
had to play dour, I don't want to save anyone, Superman.
Well, your mom's name is Martha? Oh my god. What is your next pick, Marvin?
So next pick, if we're doing dates, this one came out last year, in September of 2019, at least on Netflix, I think. I don't know. It's actually a UK show, so I don't know if it actually released elsewhere. But at least in America, it's on Netflix. It's Criminal UK. And this is a TV show where it's funny you're mentioning like, you know, European style seasons. Mm-hmm. This is only 3 episodes for this season.
I love that. I love that.
And it's interesting because Criminal, as far as I can tell, it's called Criminal UK because they also have Criminal Spain and I think another Criminal like from different countries. And I think they all just share the same set. but like have
Really?
but just have characters from their own. It's really fascinating. It's like basically the premise is the part of Law and Order where the on the foot interrogation or on the foot investigation where they're going out and doing stuff.
Mhm.
All that's over. The only part they're doing now is the interrogation in the room. But this interrogation center is like some sort of super like hyper modern looking facility. And like there's all these like setups with like mirrors and like this really fast like really like high tech looking lighting and stuff. It looks like hyper modern. And then basically they just have three like stars step in and kind of just be interrogated as the criminal. So like so for example, the first episode is what's his face? David Tennant. Yeah, from Doctor Who.
He's the criminal.
He's the criminal.
Oh wow.
Which is like really I love when David Tennant plays assholes. It's like why
100%,
Jessica Jones was really fascinating to watch.
Yes.
It's like because when he's likable, he's like, oh, he's likable because he seems like a nice guy in general. And and like so it just plays right in. So it like clashes in a really interesting way when he plays a horrible person. And then he's like he plays basically like the father of a daughter who's missing. And they're like interrogating him, and then like it's like written like a really good short story where he keeps replying just no comment or the entire time, and it's like I can see the screenplay because it's so focused, but it's the acting's really good. Second episode stars Haley Atwell,
from Captain America.
Captain America's
love interest,
main squeeze. And like she gives a performance that's like also very different from what I've seen her before in. So it's just like very concentrated chamber pieces, and there's like kind of a minor like narrative through point between the detectives who are involved because it's always the same detectives.
Okay,
this is like their police station, so that the detectives have like a kind of a through point backstory going through, but it's so light. It's like, somewhere in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the episode, they kind of just go, how's that thing going? Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, but I'll see you next time, type of thing. But, But it's like, it's great because it's like, if you want to like kind of strip away everything that's kind of like just icing about a show and just get straight down to like, what's the really good part of a police procedural and just do it hyper well. Like, there's a reason they only spent 3 episodes worth on it because the cast, they clearly just rehearsed the shit out of it and just killed it with the performances. And it's like, it's one of those where it's a joy to watch just because you're watching people who are really good at their craft act and kind of just go through basically explaining an entire criminal story through revelations by just talking, which shouldn't be interesting. Like, shows and movies should be show, don't tell, but they're all telling, but it's great. It doesn't feel like, go ahead.
Does it feel like a play kind of as well? Like does it feel like it could have been play?
No, that's about to say it doesn't work as a play, I think, because they go in and out of like the environment and the lighting and the cinematography feels so integral to the mood. I feel like if you viewed it as a play, you would get the great performances, but you wouldn't get a lot of the mood, I think, because the lighting is a lot of the mood. Like, they have that stereotypical lighting where, the interrogation room is lit brightly, but then through the one-way glass, it's like dark inside and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's lit in a way where it's like, for example, there's a plot point where they realize, a tell that the detectives tell each other when they say we should swap out detectives is they turn on the air conditioning. Like, there's no way you can really easily portray that through a play.
Yeah.
They only work because when they turn on the air conditioning, a piece of paper started fluttering slightly.
Okay.
So it's things like
that's really cool. You had me with that.
Yeah, it's so subtle and really cool that I'm like, this is something that I really hope they continue with these seasons. I mean, it's UK stuff, so it's very possible that we're done.
Yeah, they're known for that. Like, I mean, look at The Office. The Office was like what, 3 seasons? So
yeah, even
two
after
and a
all
special.
the American stuff, like Ricky Gervais is like, "Fuck, I'm not doing this again."
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
yeah.
And this is the same creator as he did. So he did Criminal UK. He did The Hour, which is my wife loves, and he did Killing Eve, which is airing now.
That I didn't know that. That makes a lot of sense in terms of the tone.
I'm telling you, the British seasons are the way to go. There's no filler. It's just like you get 2 to 4 episodes tops, and they're a little more than an hour, and you're done. Did you by any chance see? It was a co-production with Netflix and BBC. Dracula.
I never got a chance to see it. Like I would see that meme of the really cool ad, and that made me want to like, oh, what's going on here? You know, I wanted to take it out, but I never actually got to.
I really enjoyed it. It was really cool. It's 3 episodes, but the episodes are like an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. So it's like 3 movies, and they're really well done. It's the same team that did Sherlock.
Okay.
So and the actor who plays Dracula is amazing. He's doing some top-notch acting.
Is it like crazy produced like Sherlock is?
Yes, it is. It is 100%.
You know how like Sherlock will have shots where like, let's have a Matrix shot for this, and you're like, okay, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and it just goes like the storytelling is really interesting. It's the same thing that what I like about Sherlock is that you're like, oh, I didn't expect it to go this way, but all right, okay, let's go with it. Like the first episode is kind of like the book. I mean, it follows like the classic Dracula story, and then episode 2 and 3 like really go off the rails, especially 3. You're like, what the hell? But in a good way. I really enjoyed it, and it had something good to say. Like everyone's done their Dracula version, like you know, like Francis Ford Coppola has done it. You tell me the director, and they've done their own version of Dracula.
Yeah,
but this one definitely
in private.
yeah, exactly. And he definitely had like something interesting to say about like humanity and like immortality. Like looking at that, like I know people are like, we all secretly know that we're gonna die, but I think somehow we were like, well, you know, if I couldn't die, like that'd be very interesting. But he puts it in he puts a different perspective to it in this show, and I really like that stuff. It's very existential, and I enjoy that. So
it's like he's using Dracula, or the premise of Dracula, to kind of explore themes versus like telling a Dracula story.
Yeah. I mean, I think all the themes of Dracula have always been like religion and like eroticism, and how those two like butt heads. But this one is totally about like life and immortality and how fragile life is. It was really weird. It's you got to watch it. It's really interesting, especially the 3rd episode. The first 2 episodes are like just classic Dracula storytelling, but the 3rd episode really is where it kind of comes together, and you're like, oh man, that's what I was seeing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and like Van Helsing's done in a very interesting way. Everything's done.
Oh, Van Helsing's in it. Okay.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Well, spoiler alert. I'm sorry, but I think
we're fucked.
Yeah, you should watch it. That's also streaming on Netflix now, and that's all. That'll all be streaming because that was a co-production with Netflix. All right, my next pick is from 2017. It's these writer directors have a new movie that came out this year, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. But this is their second movie, I think, second feature that got produced. It's called Good Time. It's the Safdie brothers. Like they did.
Oh, gotcha.
They did Uncut Gems this year.
Yes.
But Good Time is it stars Robert Pattinson. I know what you're saying. The guy from Twilight.
No, I think here's the thing. I think if anyone at this point makes fun of him by saying, "Oh, the Twilight guy," they have not seen any of his recent work and are just making assumptions at this point. Like he's a really fucking good actor.
Yeah, and I actually feel bad for all those years that I called him the Twilight guy. This is the movie that kind of changed. I mean, I had seen him before in dramatic things, but like this is the one where like you're like, I don't recognize the other guy. You know, like you're like,
Wow.
he's doing some like deep level like acting stuff that you're like, I don't recognize the guy from Twilight. It's not the same human, you know, like you're like,
Right.
this is it's kind of like it's kind of like De Niro stuff, like in like Raging Bull, where you're like, he's going deep. So have you seen this by any chance?
No. What's the premise?
So basically, it's these two brothers. One's like special needs. One is played by Robert Pattinson, and the other is played by one of the directors, Benny Safdie. Benny Safdie plays the like special needs type brother. He's like he's deaf, but he's also got like a learning disability. And Robert Pattinson plays Connie, the older brother, who is like constantly getting into trouble. And getting his brother into trouble, you know, by having him tag along. And they botch a bank robbery in the beginning of the movie. And it's, have you seen Uncut Gems by any chance?
I haven't had a chance to actually watch all of it in one sitting.
You did see a little bit of it, right?
Yeah.
You know
it's
how
just
like
fucking yelling in anger.
Yeah, and exactly, and just like watching somebody like dig themselves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and like both Good Time and Uncut Gems, they are like an exercise in anxiety on screen. Like
yeah, Uncut Gems is like, that's partially why I stopped.
Yeah,
it's just like we gotta slow our roll.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie where if you're not doing okay right now in the situation you're in, maybe don't watch this movie because it's gonna take you to a dark place. Because of the anxiety levels that just keep rising and rising, and they do a really good job of like, some movies can't do that because you're like, I just can't take this, I'm gonna turn it off. But like the characters are so interesting and you want to keep watching and you want to see where these people end up, that they're really good. Like even like Adam Sandler's character in like Uncut Gems, like you want to know whether he makes it at the end or not, you know?
Yeah.
And same thing with Robert Pattinson. And he's doing horrible things, but you're like, come on, like this one, just don't do this one. Like go a different way. And nope, he does it. He does what you don't want him to do, and it's really well done.
It's that character.
Yeah, it's 2 hours of like a bank robbery gone wrong, and then like him digging his way deeper into a bigger problem, and it's really well done. These guys are one of my favorite like directors of like the last couple of years. Like they're doing some like interesting stuff, and I like the tone that they put on screen, and it's very different, and they have a very like interesting voice, and
it's very brutal and blunt like type of storytelling where you like, from what I've seen from the first part of Uncut Gems, it's like you watch it and you're like, this is like a sledgehammer movie where where you're like, this hits really hard. Like you're right, like if you're not prepared, you kind of have to be like, I'm gonna take a breath.
Yeah. It's one of those movies where it worked best in theaters because you can't leave. Like you're stuck. You're like, you can't turn it off. You can't go anywhere. You're stuck in your seat for 2 hours. It though I do say, if you're watching it at home, at least you have that chance to like, okay, I'm going to pause it, get some popcorn and relax a little bit.
Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should get assaulted.
Yeah. Don't put salt. You don't want any more insulting your body. Your heart rate's going to go up. The people who I went to see Uncut Gems with, I think, well, no, it wasn't somebody I went to see. My friend went to go see it with. They said that their Apple Watch gave them an alert that their heart rate was abnormal.
That's amazing. It's like when people were watching Passion of the Christ.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you better take a breather here. But yeah, it's really well done, and it's just from like the cinematography to the music, it's just it's a very wildly different voice than we've heard in a long time. And everyone keeps saying like, give them a big movie, give them like a Marvel movie and stuff, but I'm like, no, like they have I want to know what original stuff they come up with. And like their follow-up to Good Time was like Uncut Gems, and like that was amazing.
I mean, man, if they got a Marvel movie, that would be really weird.
Yeah,
but might be like James Gunn got a Marvel movie, right?
That's true. That's true. That's
after
true.
fucking Slither and Super.
I mean, there's literally a rape in Super.
I know. It's like, and then people were, it's okay, just a little sideway. Like, it was a little ridiculous when people were like, oh, I can't believe James Gunn would say those things. And it's like, have you seen his movies?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Why would you have hired him in the first place if you were afraid of this? He's fucking James Gunn.
Yeah.
Like,
just watch one of his non-Marvel movies and tell me.
Go back to his Trauma days. Jesus Christ.
I always forget about that.
It's like, it's so out there. Yeah.
So that was my pick. What is your next pick?
Well, I just realized we're doing a lot of movies, so maybe I should pick a movie too. It's a pretty big example, I think, but I think despite it having been Oscar nominated last year, I don't think that many people saw it, because it is kind of a bland premise at face value. Marriage Story. Did you ever have a chance to watch it?
I did.
Yeah. So, in general, I think Noah Baumbach, right?
Yeah.
I loved the what's it called? The whale. Sorry, Squid and the Whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was very into that. And I saw the rest of as his career went on, I see more movies. I'm like, actually, this is the one movie of his I like. And then until Marriage Story. And then I feel like Marriage Story, I think he writes good movies when he writes stuff that's directly related to his own life.
Yeah.
When he's making other movies, like the Meyerowitz stories was like, I get where the craft is in this movie. I just don't care about these characters at all. I think we've discussed that before, just randomly on another occasion. I think you, me, and Marcel have randomly discussed that randomly. But then I think because he's able to, because Marriage Story is very transparently based on his own divorce. And
exactly.
Much like how Squid and the Whale was directly based on him watching his parents divorce. So it's just interesting because he always gets good He always knows how to cast really well and then let the actors do their thing in a very effective way. Like, all of his movies have great acting since the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's always been a strong point. The problem has always been, and I think he's admitted it in the past, is that his characters tend to not necessarily be relatable or likable. And, you can have unlikable characters and still be, super drawn to them, like Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. Yeah. But they need to be mesmerizing in some way. And I think that for me at least, that didn't happen again until Marriage Story, where I can tell Adam Driver's character at the beginning is a jerk. And I can tell that Scarlett Johansson is secretly really revealed to be kind of a jerk. But I also kind of see both their points of view, and it becomes just an interesting character study of a love story where the love is falling apart in a traumatic way. And you're like, that's good. I like it.
Yeah,
it feels real. I mean, the fact that they're both rich kind of is drawn from him being rich at this point. So it's like, okay, I get it. But despite them being in a separate, economic class altogether, you still go, but they're still, it doesn't matter. They're going through the same feelings,
the themes are very universal because that's a universal theme. Like, divorce is definitely a universal thing that happens to rich to the poor. I totally agree with. I've liked a lot of his movies because he has hateable characters. I think that's one of the reasons I like his movies is because you're like he doesn't apologize for it. He's like, these people are pieces of shit, but the world is filled with pieces of shit. So let's just watch these people for 2 hours.
Well, to me, it was because Greenberg, right? It's we're supposed to not just follow kind of a shitty person, but also kind of go, but sympathize with them. I'm like, I have no sympathy for him.
Yeah. It's a hard ask.
Yeah, that's part of the issue. Whereas Squid and the Whale, you implicitly feel for, you're not supposed to sympathize with the parents. You're supposed to sympathize with the kids and immediately you just do because they're kids in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And sympathy isn't the only way to be drawn into the character, obviously, but it just is a easy way if everything around it is shitty. And I think Marriage Story really leverages that. It's like you're shitty people, but like divorce happens to anyone. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how rich you are. I mean, like even Jeff Bezos got divorced, right? He's lost half his money.
Yeah.
It's still shit. So
I think you're 100% right. Like it's kind of like it's what the Parasite director said, like that Martin Scorsese said. So he was quoting Martin Scorsese, which is like right personal, like the most personal things that Noah Baumbach has done has been the things that are most relatable and the ones that we like the most. Like the only other thing that I think that I really enjoyed of his, besides the Squid and the Whale, I mean, I always find something that I like about the movies, but the ones that I'm like stand out for me are the Squid and the Whale, Marriage Story, and Frances Ha. And that's because Greta Gerwig wrote it with him. So it was her version.
Yeah, I have to admit, Frances Ha has a lot going for it. And also the performance she gives is like, I mean, it's the reason why. It's the reason why he got a divorce.
Totally.
Because she entranced him so much in this course of the movie.
Totally. And it's funny because like Marriage Story, like everybody that I know have seen it, they're like, even if it's like one little line, one little thing, one little emotion, they're like, I recognize something in me that I saw, and like it definitely, like, it's a difficult movie to watch.
Yeah, it gets very uncomfortable in that one fight. In the apartment when he's in his temp apartment, and you're like, "Ooh, Jesus Christ, this is very familiar."
it definitely feels familiar, but it's kind of like watching, like when you're at somebody's house and like your couple friends start like arguing. You're like, oh man, it went from like playful to like it got real. That's what it feels like, but for 2 hours.
And you're like, should I leave?
I'm
not sure if I should leave.
where do I stand? Can I just walk out of this thing? Can I disappear?
This is a very small apartment. I can't just sit in the bathroom.
and they're blocking the door. But no, that's a definitely good movie. And it came out last year. It was nominated for an Oscar. Did he win the Oscar?
It won just for Laura Dern, I believe.
Which is a weird win. Like she's in it for like 5 minutes.
Granted, it's as the Oscars often are. It's it's a matter of politics and positioning, right? And I think just for the best supporting actress position, she was clearly the person.
Yeah,
it was nominated for a ton of stuff like Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Picture, etc. It's just, I think, just the positioning of all the other movies, like Parasite just killed it that year, right?
Yeah.
So it was just hard for it to really compete.
I like the scripts that Noah Baumbach has like co-written with like Wes Anderson, because it's a pretty like funny like filmography as a writer. It's like The Life Aquatic, The Fantastic Mr. Fox. And then like serious stuff like Marriage Story.
I think it helps because I think like like pure undistilled Wes Anderson is Bottle Rocket, right? Where it's just kind of just like this is his idealized version of being a ne'er-do-well in like growing up sort of thing, and that's fine, but like none of it feels at stake. Feels like there's nothing at stake ever. And I think whenever you bring Noah Baumbach in, he figures out with that type of story, he figures out a way to like bring in emotional stakes into it. Like fucking Fantastic Mr. Fox has emotional stakes, and I think a lot of that is his insert, because I think he's very good at taking like fairly mundane situations and realizing that people, if characters have emotional investment in what's going on, then you can make it feel a lot more, not necessarily just relatable, but like feel a lot more like there's more happening rather than here's a quirky thing that happened. it's like a quirky thing happened that really fucked up this person's life.
Yeah.
And it sort of elevates what the actual stakes are going to be. And I think he helps a lot with that, probably, if we're comparing to like earlier Wes Anderson, where before he was involved.
I like looking at Noah Baumbach's filmography, because you're like, oh, okay, he's got the stuff with Wes Anderson. Okay, Greenberg. Oh, Madagascar 3. Oh, he must have just co-written. No, he literally wrote the screenplay for that.
Yeah, I don't know. That I don't know what's going on.
well, if you see where it lands, like he met Greta Gerwig after Greenberg, so I'm sure there's something sketchy going on there. Yeah. He probably started getting divorced around that time, and he's like, well, better load up on money for Madagascar.
Right, that's a timing thing. Oh yeah, man, yeah. I thought it'd be like a Taika Waititi thing, where Taika was just like randomly approached me like, hey, you seem to be involved in movies. Would you like to write what was that oh man, what is that Disney animated movie with the Islanders? What's it called? The Rock, and he sings.
Oh yeah, God damn it, Moana.
Yeah, Moana. Yeah. He was like, "Would you like to write Moana? You're brown. Would you like to, to write
Are you interested?"
Yeah, I thought it was a similar situation like that. And then Taika was like, you know what? I'm not gonna.
I'm not gonna do that.
I would like to write a movie that doesn't stereotype, please. And they're like, well, we need some stereotyping.
I think the connection there on Madagascar is Ben Stiller. He'd work with Ben Stiller,
that makes sense.
So
yeah. Ben's like, hey, I can help you out here. We're doing a third one of these.
Yeah, you want to make some money, dude? Come right on this thing for a bit.
That's exact. That must be it. Yeah.
My next pick. Where are we? Are we on 1, 2, 3? I've done 3, so this is my fourth pick. My fourth recommendation. This is a hard choice because there's a lot of good stuff streaming on Netflix, but I'm gonna pick something fun, and then I'll end it with something dark.
Okay.
The something fun is something that you don't even have to watch it. Like, look, put it on the background. It's something it's something to distract you from the news. Just put this on, enjoy it. It's from 1988. It's one of the best martial arts movies ever made. Yes, I'm talking about Bloodsport. It's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
It's Jean-Claude Van Damme, the great international artist known by everybody as Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's his first American film, first officially leading man role feature film.
Was that his first?
Wow. Yeah, because he had done like The Eagle and the Tiger. He'd done a bunch of stuff with like he had done a bunch of stuff where he played like the villain character or like just a small bit part. He was in Breaking. Remember, he was he was the extra in Breaking. But
Wait, he was in Breaking?
Yeah, when they're dancing on the beach, he's in a one piece unitard in the background dancing.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm going to send you the clip of it, and I'm going to post it on the film podcast on their story. Okay. But it's amazing because you're like, oh, we're watching Break. Oh my God, that's Jean-Claude Van Damme in the background.
Never caught that. Oh shit.
Oh dude, I've gone on deep dives on Jean-Claude Van Damme, dude. Honestly, I will say this. This is one of the first movies that my dad took me to go see at the movie theater.
Okay, yeah,
and that's why I just was like, I'm in. This guy has got my heart and my eyes. This beautiful, beautiful man. So he did Breaking. He was an extra in that. He played the villain in No Retreat, No Surrender. Mm-hmm. And this was his first leading role. He also did the same year he did Black Eagle with Sho Kosugi. I don't know if you remember that movie. Yeah. And then he rocketed into the international star he is now.
Yeah, into the sex symbol he is now.
Yeah. The movie follows, and now it's come out that this whole story is totally fake and none of it happened.
Oh yeah, that's the crazy disappointing part, isn't it? Because part of the intrigue is that you understand that this can't be real, but it's based on something. but you try to think about what could it really have been, and it turns out nothing.
Yeah. So the movie says based on a true story. Yeah. Based on the true story of Frank Dukes, an American martial arts military man who gets an invitation to a full contact tournament, martial arts tournament in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And I know what you're saying. Like, that sounds like badass. That could happen. Yeah, it didn't fucking happen. No. None of this happened. Apparently, there might be a thing, like Kumite type event, but not like.
They wouldn't let outsiders in.
No human in that has contact to the news media has ever been invited to that. I'm sure there's no cell phones. There's none of that. But yeah, it's basically Van Damme and like going in this like tournament style like martial arts tournament, and it's beautiful. There's all types of fighting. I'm sure Street Fighter like came out of this, right? Like that it had to.
Yeah, right? For sure. He got enough capital to be asked by the Mortal Kombat team, would you like to be in Mortal Kombat as Johnny Cage? Because we actually based Johnny Cage on you.
That's right.
Yeah, and then he was like, no way, man. I'm going to do the Street Fighter movie instead.
Oh, man. You know what? Street Fighter.
Listen, God he got to get good with Kylie Minogue on that shoot, so
really close. Here's I have another thing about Street Fighter, but let me finish on Bloodsport. Bloodsport. It's an amazing movie. It's just 80s martial arts movies. Look, it's very stupid. I get it now. Like I'm filtering it through the eyes of like a 6-year-old who wanders into this movie not knowing anything. I was way too young to see this movie. I don't know what my dad was thinking, and I am mesmerized by all the goddamn fucking roundhouse kicks this guy's doing. And by the way, both in this movie and Street Fighter, this beautiful man that has the thickest what is it? It's kind of like a French accent, right? Because he's from Brussels, so it's like it's he's got the thickest accent, but he's playing an all-American. And this and Street Fighter.
It's the 80s. That's the 80s.
Yeah, look at Arnold.
The 80s are actors who don't speak English as their first language playing characters who are Americans.
I know. But this is a beautiful movie. There's after this, I saw this movie for years. I thought, man, I hope to one day get invited to the Kumite and fight. Like that was like my dream. Was like one day I want to fight full contact. Like the only reason to like live was to get invited to Kumite. And then how sad was I when I found out it was goddamn fake?
Oh man.
All right, so that's my fourth pick of my fourth recommendation.
I would just also mention, just because we brought up the topic of fake of fake martial arts, there's a really great YouTube video by a channel called Super Eye Patch Wolf that actually goes on a deep dive into the world of fake martial arts. And it's fascinating. Yeah, it's Frank Dukes is mentioned, and other, like, you know, they talk about the origin of Dim Mak. You know, do you remember like those old comics? Yeah, they would talk about Dim Mak, and like Dim Mak is, I don't even think it stands for anything. I think it's just a made up word. And then you know, anyway, I'm not gonna get too much into it here, but it's if anyone wants to check it out, because it is a fascinating deep dive exploration as to what's going on there.
I went on a deep dive on Street Fighter one time, and I just like anything I could get my hands on. Like this was like I wish this was like, oh, it was in high school. No, this was like a year or two ago. and like I found like so many interviews with like the director, Raul Julia, like everybody who was like, they had to move the production from Thailand to like, I want to say some weird like Eastern European country because they couldn't get the male actors out of massage parlors.
No, yeah, that totally happened. Yeah, where the best part is that they were also they were contractually obligated to also appear for filming for the video game. Do you remember the Street Fighter, the movie, the video game?
Yeah.
And then like the guy who plays E Honda, he just said fuck it and he just left.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And they went to, I think it's E Honda. I think that's the character that's missing.
Yeah,
But they went to his trailer, and they were like, okay, we're ready to shoot your game parts, and it was cleared out. He was already got because he's like, fuck this. This is trailer.
Yeah, this is, if you like Bloodsport, if you haven't seen any films by Jean-Claude Van Damme, do yourself a favor, start with this one. You know, it's a good trilogy to watch, just because you get a good sense of like, whoa, what is this guy all about, and this guy's career. Is watch Bloodsport, watch Hard Target, and then watch JCVD.
I fucking love JCVD.
JCVD made me fucking cry, dude.
No,
I shit you not.
You get legitimately emotional watching it. If you've followed this person's career and you've seen where it leads to this movie, that scene where he's doing 2-camera and starts rising to show it's a set. Jesus Christ.
That's where I lost it, dude. And I'm not like, yeah, for the people like listening, like I joke around a lot about Jean-Claude Van Damme, but this movie, like, so JCVD is a movie where he kind of plays himself, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he's like back in Brussels, and he's like a washed up actor, and he can't really do action anymore because he's older, and he gets swept up into this weird like bank robbery thing, and he gives like the best performance of, I think, that year, dude. I don't know what came out of the year, but he makes you cry. Like when he's talking about his career and his like how much he's given to like movies, and it's a beautiful fucking performance.
And it's like it doesn't necessarily even forego the fact that he's still physically a great action star too. It starts off with one of the best action scenes he's ever had in a movie.
It's a one taker too.
Yeah, that one taker. You're like, Jesus, this is awesome. It's cinematic, like, purity of how much it loves Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it really tries to treat him with a reverence while understanding his flaws. Yeah.
If you want to watch 3 movies by Jean-Claude Van Damme, those are the 3: Bloodsport, Hard Target, and JCVD. Beautiful movies. Yeah, what is your last pick, Marvin?
Oh, I got 1 pick left, huh?
Yeah, we've arrived at 5.
We're arrived at 5. Okay, well, if we got 1 left, I will say let's go back to around the same period as well. I thought this is the movie you were going to mention at first, and I got super excited, but I was still excited. But this is the movie I thought you were gonna talk about. Back to 1990. Let's go back to a certain comic book independent movie. Called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I was speaking with a friend about this about a year ago, and he said, dude, I rewatched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It does not hold up. And I was like, I don't know, man. Let me go watch it again. And he was fucking wrong. This movie, it's legitimately well constructed as a movie, just structurally. And the things they do to kind of change the way Raphael meets up with Casey Jones, and the way April O'Neil is kind of built into the story, and it's legitimately heartbreaking when you see Raphael thrown through that skylight, and you're like, oh my god, they kicked the shit out of him, he's almost dead. And you're like, and it's a legitimately well-made movie, one of Sam Rockwell's earliest roles.
He plays like thug number 3 or something.
He plays like the main thug. Of the guys who aren't ninjas, he plays the main guy. And I always remember the scene where he's giving these teenagers the tour, and then he goes, check out this place. It's like, it's a bunch of people who are like, they're just skateboarding indoors and like tagging their own property.
Yeah, that's the best.
And then he goes, all right, you want regular or menthol?
This is great because
2 cartons of cigarettes.
This is a kids movie. This is a kids movie from like, what is it, 90? You said 90?
1990. Yeah.
And they're giving kids fucking cigarettes.
Yeah, and the kids immediately go menthol. And the crazy part. Okay, no studio would actually take this movie. They said there was no way this movie was going to make any money. So it's actually completely independently produced. And I think at the time it was the most successful, like financially successful indie film of all time. And it's done with the only recognizable thing is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles brand. There's no stars in it.
No. The guy who plays the Casey Jones, his career hadn't like skyrocketed yet. He's a guy who was he in Law and Order? Elias Koteas.
Yeah. Later on, he would end up doing other. He'd have kind of like a B movie career for a little bit. But like he ended up in like, I think he was in Zodiac. As a character.
Yeah.
He was doing a lot of stuff. Yeah.
He's a character that you would recognize in like everything. He was in a bunch of TV stuff. He just recently he's in like Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD. He's in all the Chicago shows.
Yeah, he was in The Killing.
Yeah. When you see his face, you're like, oh yeah, that guy. He plays Casey Jones, and basically, so he wasn't even a star then. So it was basically like 0 stars. Yeah. Nobody famous is in this. It's just the Turtles IP, which wasn't even an IP back then.
It's true. Like we have this memory of it being a huge deal back then, but it still actually wasn't.
Yeah. I too have just rewatched it because I was showing it to my kid, and it definitely holds up. Yeah. It definitely holds up.
The thing that always if a lot of people will watch the trilogy, in order, right?
Yeah.
The thing that always surprises me when I watch the first movie is that the animatronics in the Turtles are so good. They're like Dark Crystal level of like really, really well animated.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, if you watch the next one, Secret of the Ooze, you're like, what the hell happened? They look so different and they look so crappy by comparison. It's kind of amazing. I also like that the people who play the voices with, of the Turtles, they have like random cameos in the movie because they're like, we want some screen time. So like the guy who delivers pizza to them is one of them. I forget the rest, but they're just sprinkled throughout the movie. And it's like, it's a genuinely, you act like, it's a weird movie because for like what's ostensibly a comic book superhero movie. There's a whole sequence where they do an Avengers, we're going to hang out in a cabin style thing, and they just hang out for a bit. And there's just scenes of Casey Jones preparing salad with a katana. Just a scene of Casey Jones and April sitting on that porch bench, and then like the bench just breaks. And from what I understand, that bench breaking was not supposed to happen.
Yeah, it was an accident.
Yeah, and then so they decided to just like, that's good. He responded well. That's a take, and it's actually really interesting knowing that it was actually like a kind of a low budget for that type of. I'm looking at it now. It's only $13.5 million. Like for a movie that has that level of animatronics and needed like all those ninja extras and all these different types of sets. It's like, that's actually incredible that they managed to pull it off that convincingly.
It's in like 8 million is going to like animatronics and like costumes.
And it didn't like kind of mess around with like, it was willing to get dark. Like
it got really dark.
Yeah, like Splinter is like basically crucified on a chain link fence.
Yeah,
And they beat the shit out of him. And then like the way Shredder fights the Turtles is extremely brutal. And like, it's a great movie.
The only recognizable name when this movie first came out would be Corey Feldman, who does the voice of Donatello.
Yeah, that's
true.
But
that's
true.
That's it. Yeah. This definitely holds up. I like the cartoons. I like this movie, and I like 3 because there's time travel, and I'm a sucker for time travel. But really, I think this one set the bar so high that it's hard to kind of enjoy the sequels as much as, because the sequels don't hold up. Definitely don't hold up.
They don't. That's the disappointing part. But part of it is also that it's almost a miracle this movie's this good.
Yeah,
Because the initial concept of Ninja Turtles was kind of like, even though it's presented really like darkly, like it's a joke, right? The foot is a parody of the hand. The fact that they're turtles and a rat is supposed to be a joke in general.
Totally.
And the fact that the ooze is what gave them their powers is supposed to be ripping off a Daredevil, but it's just like. But you take something that should be kind of dumb, and if you treat it just goes to show, if you carefully treat anything with care, you can actually, even with limitations, you can make something that's really good.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've managed to really recapture that since. There's been other Turtle things in general, TMNT things that are okay, and some of them are pretty good. But I don't think any of them are like this good capsule of how neatly put together this is. This is it still holds up, and it gets me every time.
The Netflix is doing this thing where they're going. The thing is called The Movies You Loved. Mm-hmm. It's like a series. They go like they did Home Alone, they did Dirty Dancing. I'd love to see them do like an episode of this because it's very interesting. They covered some of it in a documentary that came out in 2014. I don't know if you saw it. It was called Turtle Power.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No.
It is really good. They literally go from like comic book to like where they're at in 2014. It's really well done. Really well done. And
that's interesting. Yeah, because it's gone. That's the weird thing about the Turtles property. They'll just keep rebooting it over and over and over again, like trying to recapture something. But what they really got to do is just stick with the thing that's working and kind of grow it. But they never get a chance to do that. And I think that it's part of it's that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, they're kind of just like whatever with the property. They're like, we're making the money. We don't really mind if you want to reboot it again. You know,
just keep paying, just send us our checks.
They did not think this would be as lucrative as it was.
No.
Yeah.
All right, for my last pick, my last recommendation, I'm gonna go with 2015's really dark, gritty, kind of neo-noir. Really, it really shook me when I saw this because I hadn't seen the trailer, I hadn't seen anything. I just started watching it and I was like, what the fuck? It's Green Room. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh yeah,
it's one of Anton Yelchin's like last movies. It's not his last, but it's like it's like second or third to the last movies. It's Anton Yelchin, Imogen Poots, Aaliyah Shrokat. She played maybe on Arrested Development. Mm-hmm. Patrick Stewart playing a villain.
Amazing. It's one of his most interesting roles he's ever done.
Yes. There's a bunch of like character actors that you would recognize, but it's written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and he did a movie called Blue Ruin before this, and he's like an indie director, and I had seen Blue Ruin, and I think that's what made me see it. This movie, and I went without knowing anything, and it really blew me away with like the intensity and like where they were going with it. And so basically the synopsis is a punk rock band. They're forced to like they're kind of on tour, and they take like one last gig, like one gig that wasn't scheduled. It's at this like bar in this like desolate part of I think it's like I want to say it's like Oregon or some like weird like West Coast like town.
It's in like the Pacific Northwest in general. Yeah, I don't think they actually are that specific about it.
No, but it feels like kind of like Oregon, Washington. And they're paid to play at this bar, and they kind of need the money. They're living out of their van, and it's a neo-Nazi skinhead bar, and things go from like, oh well, it's not so bad. I mean, we're playing music and they're paying us, and then something happens in the green room after the concert that kind of changes everything, and they're trapped. I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give too much spoilers, but it's just really intense, and it's really well acted by like every single actor that's in this movie.
So I have to make a confession. The main reason I wanted to watch this movie is because I'm a huge TNG nerd, Star Trek Next Generation nerd. And then I was like, because Patrick Stewart, for those of you who don't know, like in TNG, he's very much, he is the one captain out of all the Star Trek property who's very much reserved and will always go for the, okay, we're going to just talk about this and negotiate, because we are civilized people. Like a good example is there's a have you seen much of TNG or no?
No, remember we talked. I think I talked to you about this. Like I wanted a list of like the like if I could just start on this, or because I'm not a big. So I've seen the movies. I've seen every single one of the Star Trek movies, and some of the original like what is it, 70s? stuff.
The original series.
Yeah, but nothing from TNG.
Yeah, so the TNG movies are very different from the show because here's a really good example of how extreme his diplomacy is. There is something called the crystalline entity. And the crystalline entity literally is it's like a moon-sized entity that literally drives by planets and sucks the life off of it. Right? So there's a scientist in the Federation who's like, we need to kill this thing. It is trying to kill all the planets, right? But Picard goes, now hold on. I would argue that the crystalline entity is, its own sentient being. Maybe we should try to communicate with it. And she's like, are you fucking crazy? Just kill it. And then, so that's Picard. But then Patrick Stewart himself, most people don't realize because their main view of him is TNG and the X-Men movies, but he's actually a huge bro.
Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, Patrick Stewart is a huge bro.
Really?
Yeah, he loves to go to bars and drink, and his favorite thing is off-roading.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah, on ATVs and and SUVs and shit. That's his jam. So
that's
even
amazing.
reveals in some BTS for I think it's Insurrection, where there's a scene where there's a dune buggy in Insurrection, and then on the planet. And he's like, yeah, they put that scene in because of me. I told them that I really like off-roading. So, They decided to put in an off-roading section for me. So then when I see Green Room and I see the premise, and I'm like, oh, is this Patrick Stewart going to come out? And it kind of does. And it makes it's interesting because you're you get to see him act in a way that people don't normally cast him in.
I love this Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, we were talking about it earlier. It's interesting seeing these types of people playing villains. And then you're
That's one of my favorite things about the actors who just play the nice guy and everything. And then they do a villain part. Because take, for instance, I love Matt Damon. But after The Departed, I hated him for a good 2 years. Because he just played such a good bad guy.
Yeah.
And Patrick Stewart's the same.
Yeah, the one I always think of a really good for lack of a better term baby face actor to heel turn is Tom Cruise when he goes to what's it called Collateral.
Yes,
where he plays the most sociopathic piece of shit. It's he's never played a role like it since, so that role remains almost legendary. He'll never play such a jerk ever again. But
I think that's the reason is because you have one good turn, and then because also once you do one thing, they're well, you got to be that from now on. You're just badass at that, And I think, but I would love to see Tom Cruise because he was so good in Collateral, so good.
Yeah.
But Green Room, it's just so intense. I know a lot of movies picks. I did pick a kids movie, so look, I'm going to give you that. But this is really well done. It's really well directed. I've been looking.
What would the kids movie be?
I did. John Carter from Mars.
Is that really a kids movie?
It was definitely marketed that way. It's like a weird CGI heavy Disney movie.
I guess so. It is a Disney movie. They won't let it get that. It was kind of violent in some parts, but it wasn't
I was definitely surprised in some of those parts in John Carter, but I would consider that a kid's movie. I would totally. I mean, I let my kid watch anything, in moderation. But I am pretty liberal with the things he watches. But I think that this one's definitely a heavy movie. Even all the actors that are in it play such it's off brand for them. Anton Yelchin's character, it's definitely, he's not the leading action guy. And not that this is action heavy, but it's a different turn for him.
It helps though, because he's playing such a guy who very feels like fish out of water, and very much because he feels so timid at the beginning, where you're just how is this guy Anton Yelchin, I know of him as the Star Trek
yeah
like guy who has the lisp. Well,
yeah
how will he get out of this? It's good contextual casting. Like
yeah
all this casting is very good contextually with their current the zeitgeist at that time of
yeah
where they were known as actors.
Even like Imogen Poots, who you're like, oh, this British actress, and she plays like this like dirty punk rock girl. It's really fucking well done, man. That is my pick. I'm not gonna tell you more. Go see it. It's streaming. Go check it out. Marvin, what's your last recommendation?
Okay, last recommendation. I thought I was done, but okay. Like I have one more.
No, I think because I started, so you finish it.
Okay, this is kind of out of left field, but stick with me, okay?
All right.
Okay, it's because it's an anime, and yeah, it's I don't know if many viewers, but I tend to I like anime. I'm just gonna put it out there, but a lot of anime most people shouldn't watch.
yeah, I can agree with that
because it's kind of crap. But there's one prominent anime that's feature a lot of Netflix. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So basically the world building of this show, it's hard to give a date for it because Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is actually a remake of a previous Full Metal Alchemist show that did poorly, which is why it's called
from like 2003, right?
Yeah, like the first version was just to explain really quickly, they ran out of manga to adapt. So they started making up their own story and it was shit. So when the manga actually finished, they decided to, okay, let's just remake it. But now that we know the whole story for real, let's remake it that way. And it's really interesting because it starts off very anime, right? In the sense that it's basically what if magic was science and alchemy was like a thing where you can turn elements into another element really quickly by basically drawing circles. So very anime premise. But then you realize it's actually kind of like a metaphor for like the politics of 1930s Germany. And like the way genocide in general is committed of people of a different skin color. And it's fascinating because like they always refer to them, the Ishvalans from the East or from, I think it's the East. Yeah. And it's like, oh, you mean the Middle East. Okay. And this place is actually like their leader is called Führer. So you're like, okay, so you're Nazis. Okay.
Yeah.
And but the characters are part of that Nazi army. So their entire they initially start off being alchemists because they tried to bring their dead mother back. But that's a forbidden thing in alchemy. So because they did it, they like the experiment went wrong and they lost. There's two brothers. The first brother loses an arm and a leg, and the other brother loses their whole body. So their soul has to be bound to a piece of armor, which is kind of nutty, but very anime. And then the whole point is that once you set up all of these world building pieces, you go, okay, and now let the politics begin. And it turns into like this espionage politics driven show where characters start. It reminds me of like, there are scenes that almost remind me. Do you remember the first Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise is meeting up with John Wright again?
Yeah.
John Voight again.
John Voight, yeah.
In the cafe or in the diner, and he's like, as John Voight's explaining, Tom Cruise is thinking of that's not what really happened, but he's talking about what in a way to please John Voight.
Yeah.
The show, like the second half of that show, kind of does that all the time. So it becomes very interesting where it becomes sort of like if you create all these different political divisions, how would they start clashing? And it's interesting. Normally I wouldn't normally when I recommend anime to people, I start with like the safe choice is Cowboy Bebop. So everyone, if you want to start anime, go watch Cowboy. Netflix is adapting it right now because it's that prolific amongst the people who don't watch anime. But Cowboy Bebop,
that and like Akira, right, are like the two big things.
Yeah, like for some reason Akira, even though Akira is like in my opinion, some of the most inaccessible Japanese-centric shit ever made. like it starts off with a nuclear explosion in a way that mirrors like Hiroshima. It's very Japanese, but it's so legendary that that's the thing people get drawn to. That and Evangelion for some reason, even though Evangelion is like, what if Japan combined Christianity and depression into a robot anime? But Cowboy Bebop is very much like, here's jazz in space, with episodic bounty hunters, and you're like, that's great. But Full Metal Alchemist is like very much in the realm of like, this is super anime. But if you're willing to delve into the kind of bullshit that anime is, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood especially is great because it rewards you for remembering all of its rules and remembering all of the political factions, because they all coalesce in like that last season, and you're like, oh man, it's actually all coming together. This wasn't just someone writing like towards nothing. It all comes together. Cool. It like there's like 10 different factions, each with like 5 to 10 different main characters, all coming together to form to this one giant thing at the end. And like world-changing shit happens, and you're like, this is awesome. Like everything pays off in a way that's not necessarily satisfying to you because it's not about that, but in a way that makes sense. Like you don't it doesn't end like some other shows where you're like, oh, that felt good, and that's the end of that story. It's more of like, that's what happens when they all smash into each other, and this happens.
And you're talking about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, because there's another one. There's another one from 2017.
So that's right. 2007. So there's been a lot of. I don't know which one that might be. That might be the movie.
Okay.
So the movies in general, I don't know if I would recommend. Especially if it's that live action movie you're talking about. That live action movie, there's a thing about Japan. Well, I shouldn't argue because Americans do, like we did it for Ghost in the Shell, and we put Scarlett Johansson in the role of a Japanese character.
Yeah.
But his name is Edward Elric, and he has blue eyes and blonde hair, but he's played by a Japanese guy. Really? So you're like, all right, whatever. But that's not the main problem with the movie. The main problem with the movie is that's bad. But it's
actually, I'm what I'm looking at right here is the live action like adaptation.
Don't watch that. That will make you not want to watch Full Metal Alchemist anymore. But watch Brotherhood, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. There are other movies and like the original series, Full Metal Alchemist. The original is okay. It's like a lot of people claim that it's like the worst thing in the world, and it's honestly not. It does end poorly. But given that they ran out of material and they started coming up with material on their own, I think it ended as well as it could, them winging it. But Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is definitely where everything kind of coalesces together, and it's satisfying in the sense that you realize the authors knew where they wanted this to go, and everything kind of makes sense thematically, at least. Things that you feel like, to put it in a different way, it's not like things happen because you think they should happen. Things happen because you're like, oh, of course that's how it happened, and then it kind of throws you off that way, but in a good way. It's great.
I dig that. I hate when you're like you're like 2-3 seasons in, and you're like, we don't know where the fuck we're going.
Yeah, you know that dread you get sometimes when you're watching a show. This happened to me with Good Place, even though I really love Good Place now, like especially having completely finished it. But like by the time you're in the 3rd season of Good Place, you're like, okay, how long can they really keep this going? Because this is like, it feels like you're writing to keep the show going versus writing to make a good story.
Yeah.
And Full Metal Alchemist, you never get that. Even though you know it ends, there's nothing about the middle of it where you go, we're just going to keep going. It really feels like there's a goal this whole time, and we're going towards it, and it's good. And at the end of the day, it's a story about 2 kids, despite being involved in the military, they're learning to grow up and be adults. A lot of good stories are these types of Bildungsromans, right? Where you put it in the context of of kids trying to deal with the horrors of the adult world. In this case, the horrors of the adult world is genocide. But you gotta find the context where you can. So that's
Did you like Death Note?
The live action?
Yeah, the anime.
How much of the anime is there? I
think
don't know.
There's one season. It's 37 episodes.
Okay, so here's the thing about Death Note. Death Note. This is funny because this is like a joke amongst people who watch anime. Like, oh, you haven't seen Death Note? Like, as though if it's like the pinnacle of something interesting in anime.
It's funny because I'm not into anime at all.
Yeah.
And so I've seen like what you mentioned. I've seen Akira. I've seen Akira. I've seen Cowboy Bebop, and I've seen what's the one? The vampire one?
Oh,
the really famous vampire one.
Is it?
Not Castlevania because it's like American. Like 90 something.
Shoot. I know what you're.
It's at the tip of my tongue. Everyone who's into anime has seen it. But this is like the fourth thing I've seen that's anime, and I dug it. I really dug it. Death Proof. Sorry, Death Note.
Death Note.
Yeah.
Okay. So the premise of Death Note, I think, works well if you're like, because sometimes when you're let's get a little dark. Sometimes when you're fantasizing, you go, maybe a Death Note would be good.
Yeah. So for the people who don't know what Death Note is, it's about this like he's like a weird like god. He's like a weird god of death kind of thing, Shimigami. And he issues these death notes, which is like a journal, and how if you put somebody's name in it, they die in the way you want them to die, as long as it's a tangible thing. Like you can't say someone that lives in Arizona is going to get bitten by a shark, because there's no way for a shark to get to Arizona. Like it's just you'd have to be specific. Like this person goes to an aquarium and then gets eaten. He falls into the aquarium. He gets eaten by a shark. It's a very specific thing. That's basically the premise of Death Note. Yeah, and then I wish I had a Death Note now.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Part of it is like almost like like a fantasy that you're watching a character play out in a very dark way.
Yeah,
and it's out of control because the rules start being established that the way you use a Death Note is that because it forces people to die a certain way, it means you can chart out the last moments of their lives very specifically, and as you use the Death Note, and then on top of that, like characters are introduced that are like outlandishly brilliant, because how else would you be able to keep up with a Death Note?
Yeah.
So the show kind of gets off the rails a little bit, or the
really
manga,
fast. Yeah, they both do.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's something that's fun to check out, but also it's one of those animes where you're like, you don't have to finish it if you don't want.
Yeah. It's really good, like concept, and like just hearing the concept again, I'm like, well, you know what? The American movie adaptation was very horrible.
Yeah,
but William Dafoe plays the Shimmy.
He's a perfect casting, actually. For that the death god guy.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, like, if you have any interest in that little snippet that we just mentioned, which is a notebook where you could write somebody's name and they die, fuck it, why not? Check out the movie. It's streaming on Netflix. It's a Netflix original.
It's true. Yeah. Was the vampire anime you're talking about Hellsing?
No, god damn it.
Or is it
Vampire Hunter D? Is it?
Yeah. Okay, that was the other one I was gonna think of. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. It came out of nowhere, and I just remembered Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah, this is the movie. I think.
Is it?
I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. But that's basically my knowledge into that.
Listen, the problem with anime, just like other things that you can get too deep into, is that the more you're a fan of it, the more you hate it.
yeah, that's true.
So it's fine. I think it's good when people kind of keep it at like an arm's length and go, but that one's good, and they grab it and they go, let's watch that one. That's why I mentioned like specific ones like Full Metal Alchemist or Sure.
In moderation, everything in moderation.
Yeah, because when you get deep in that anime shit, like right now, Beastars is on Netflix, and I don't know if I'd really recommend people watch Beastars right now. But it's basically furries all in a furry world, and
holy shit, dude.
There's murder and fucking.
It's funny because like if you really get away from if you get away from your like streaming device on your TV and you go into log into Netflix on your computer, you could really get into some like deep dives if you just like kind of follow just type in like Kurt Russell and then find like a random Kurt Russell movie, then click on an actor that was in that movie, that Kurt Russell movie, and just like YouTube, you can go on an amazing deep dive of like weird movies on Netflix.
Yeah.
But those are our recommendations. I'll give a recap of my recommendations. John Carter. It's a family friendly movie. Free Fire, Good Time, and Green Room was my last recommendation.
Yeah. So what did I recommend?
Oh, and Bloodsport. Sorry.
Oh, Bloodsport. Yeah. So I had recommended Criminal UK.
Yeah.
Marriage Story, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
and your first one was I'm trying to blank here.
Castlevania, and also I Am Not Okay with This, and Ozark.
Yes. Yeah.
I actually recommended like
Ozark.
six or seven things
because we went on a deep dive really fast, man.
Yeah, it's fine. These are okay. These won't lead you astray. I'll just tell you.
No. They're fun watches. What we'll do is we'll do another episode, but we'll do it with like Hulu or Amazon. Anything streaming free.
Oh, Amazon.
Oof. Yeah.
That's got some. I really like, some of the stuff Amazon Studios is willing to do just because they are in competition and they're trying.
Yep. That'll be another episode. Check us out. We don't have an internet presence like we used to have. Look, if you want to contact us and you give us for the new listeners, we used to be called the List Film Podcast, and we still do that. So what we did is we would pick a topic. So it's like say like we would do like top five favorite comedies, top 5 favorite movies by Tom Hanks, and that's what we would do. And then we started doing different things, so we changed the name of the podcast. And we're still going to be doing that. We're going to be still doing lists. We're going to be doing recommendations. We're going to be doing we used to do a segment called Director's Cut, which is we go through a director's filmography and we kind of discuss it, and we kind of break it up. Yeah, we break it up into like 3 3 different parts. The next director we're doing is Tony Scott. So we're making our way through all the Tony Scott movies, and then we're gonna finish up. We started another series called the Canon Film Series, which is where we're watching all the Canon films.
Man,
yeah.
I wish
if you want to jump on, you got to jump on, man. I think we're so I'm going to try to fix the episode so like you can go back and find the canon ones at least, because we're just kind of rebooting the whole podcast. But bear with me. We'll continue. If you've been listening before, we'll continue where we left off, which I think was Death Wish 4, I believe, in the canon filmography. I'll look it up though, and I'll make sure we pick up where we left off. And we're gonna be doing more stuff like that. I mean, especially if we're gonna be stuck at home, might as well be doing some cool stuff like this. So
this is the perfect time to stay at home and watch some shit.
Especially because like all these movies are accessible. Like now, like there's no reason. That's one of the things that I love and hate about this is that like you can instantly say like, oh man, like Charles Bronson, I'm going to download all his movies right now. And you can do that.
Yeah.
But you can't accidentally find things like when you would go to the video store and be like, well, I'm looking for Encino Man, but it's all rented out. I have to rent something.
That's completely true. Now it's almost because of the way everything's digital, it's hard to have the cult classic come up out of incidental finding. It's almost always has to be like some sort of like publicity or word of mouth that blows up in a certain weird way. But it's so rare now because
you can't accidentally stumble into something.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of can by like the recommendations, but you're basing it on like this algorithm that's telling you, well, you like this thing. But sometimes when you would go to the video store, you'd be like, this is nothing. This is nothing. This is nowhere near the ballpark of what I'm looking for, but I'm going to give it a chance.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I came here to get a copy of Pacific Rim, but then what the hell is this Vampire 3000 movie or Dracula 3000 movie? I don't know. Let's go watch this shit. What is this? And it turns out it's got fucking oh my god, who's that rapper? Oh my god! It had,
wait! You're thinking of Vampire 2000 because Vampire 3000.
Dracula 3000.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
with it has Casper Van Diem of Starship Troopers fame.
Oh my god, you were right.
Yeah, and Coolio, who is the last vampire.
Yes,
and
you're right.
He's just running around.
Which is, by the way, a sequel to Vampire 2000, which stars Gerard Butler. Allegedly. They don't want to get sued, but yeah. Yeah, it's
that
insane.
Doesn't happen anymore.
No.
No.
You're not going to accidentally rent Time Cop.
Yeah.
But yeah, so follow us if you want to kind of give us recommendations and stuff or contact us. The easiest way, do our Instagram at the Film Podcast on Instagram. You could direct message us or comment on when we post this episode. Marvin, do you want to give out do you have a Twitter or anything you want to, if people want to follow you?
I don't have well, I run a YouTube channel with my other friend Dan. It's called Fugitive Games. It's called Fugitive Games because we have a production company called Fugitive Frames, which is what my girlfriend used to call flash frames in movies. Yeah. Basically, we do Let's Plays and talk about video games and stuff. Right now, we just finished The Outer Worlds, and we're just about to finish Fallout New Vegas. And we're going to get into like some other very different games like Batman, Arkham City, and some Rhythm Heaven. And maybe get into some Phoenix Wright later on. But yeah, if you want to check it out, just go to youtube.com and then just search for Fugitive Games, and we should be the first thing you see. So, and
I'll post a link on thefilmpodcast.com. Go to this episode, and I'll post all the links to Marvin's YouTube channel. Stay healthy, stay safe. Until next time, hey, have a good week.
Have a good week, everyone.